Yeah, I mean, basically, I think like the line to 9 work for me is to put down the microscope, and just live in not even the big picture, but the picture that's in front of me without getting out the microscope and getting too close.
Welcome to another episode of What It's Like to Be You. I'm Josh Levine, your host, and on this show, I interview accurately typed guests about their experience as their Enneagram type. Today, my guest is Celia Murnock, who is a self-prosocial 6-wing 5 with 6-1-3 trifix. This was a really good conversation to understand 6-wing 5 as a structure. I think that a lot of the kind of collective zeitgeist about the Enneagram, or the way that we hold type 6 in general, is very deeply skewed towards 6-wing 7, and so it's refreshing to get a 6-wing 5 perspective and to see how attachment in the mental center from the 6 gets supported by rejection in the mental center from the 5 as opposed to frustration from the 7. So we talk about how being a core 6, Celia is carrying an underlying awareness of how it's not possible for her to see around corners, and that any internal map of reality that she has is inherently incomplete or just one lens, which is kind of like the humility of 6, but also that within the narrow view that she's able to have, or that anyone is able to have, these two certainty building structures of the 5-wing plus the 1-fix support a way of sense making that is more internally anchored and certain than we typically or stereotypically think of with the type 6 structure. So this was a really rich conversation. I think one that will help kind of dissolve some stereotypes about 6, or at least question them. And yeah, but still certain core 6 themes are intact, like the superego structure around responsibility and dutifulness, as well as a really powerful exploration of attachment and how 6 functions in relationships with a kind of expectation of reciprocity, or a willingness to act in alignment with your worldview, and expecting a sense of, or frustrated when it doesn't receive a kind of reciprocal you acting in alignment with mine. So yeah, just really good explorations of all of the different facets of Celia's type structure, both in theory and action, and how they all cohere into a single person. So if you're interested in the Enneagram and learning more about what we're talking about here, then I recommend you come check us out at theenneagramschool.com. And I recommend in particular you check out our intro course. And without further ado, here is Celia. I'd love to start by asking you about your trajectory in education and your degree that you have, and then kind of what you do for work.
Okay.
So can you take us through that?
Yeah, so I graduated high school in 2002. I had like a million ideas about where I wanted to go from there.
Mm-hmm.
I originally thought I was going to double major in English and psychology so that I could write really rich and complex protagonists in the novels that I was going to write. And then I thought maybe I'll get a PhD and I'll become a Jungian analyst. Like, I had so many ideas, but then other days I would wake up and be like, I'm going to get a degree in forestry.
In forestry?
Yes. Yes. It's, I don't know. It seemed very like peaceful. But anyway, so I ended up doing an undergraduate degree in psychology, sort of by default. I had a boyfriend at the time. I was much more concerned with him than I was with anything regarding my studies, but I still managed to accidentally pick up a religion minor just because I found a lot of the coursework so compelling. So I graduated in 2006 with that combo. Did really nothing with it that actually pertained to the degree.
Mm-hmm.
In 2009, I went out infamously and worked with wolves in New Mexico. And that was kind of cool.
You worked with wolves?
Mm-hmm. Captive bred wolves and wolf dogs at a place called Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary.
Amazing.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it was really great. I picked up a lot of poop, and I gave some tours, and I mixed 50-pound meatloafs. Like,
whoa. Okay.
It was a lot of fun. It was, we lived really off grid in a way that most East Coasters at least, like, probably just don't even have much of a concept of. Like, the distance between me and the nearest gas station was about the same as the distance between me and, Madison Square Garden right now.
Which is just so people have a sense. Where do
Oh,
you live?
sorry. I'm in North Jersey, right outside of Newark. So
Okay,
in the
so
New
it's
York
like
metro area on the Jersey
okay,
side, and that would be
okay,
about an hour trek if I wanted to
right,
take my
okay,
car there. Um, but anyway, so you know, I just kept getting jobs wherever, not really having any kind of a specific trajectory. Then I ended up going to get my master's. In 2012, I went and I studied biomedical anthropology.
okay. That was the phrase that I remembered from our conversation was
Yeah.
biomedical anthropology.
Yeah.
How did you decide to do that?
So I always kind of wanted to be at the intersection of like physical and behavioral stuff, study like the human animal and the way that like psychological and cultural components interplay with genetics and physiology. But I was never
Mm-hmm,
picky about like what angle that would take.
mm-hmm,
It was just like, so the best way that I could describe the way that I conceptualize this stuff is actually something that my best friend said years ago when somebody asked her why she double majored in anthropology and psychology, and her response to them was like, "Well, what else is there?" you know.
okay, yeah,
And it's kind of it speaks to the way that it's all this interconnected sort of swirling soup, and I have always like been drawn to, like I said, articulating the gray areas. Like
mm-hmm.
teasing out those all those confounding variables that other people don't even recognize as confounding variables. Um, so what this degree does is it allows me to look at either a particular health phenomenon or condition or a particular population and tease out the intricate variables that lead to like an increased incidence of such and such a disease in such and such a population. Like why is this hitting these people in this way that is noticeable? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Um, so there's a lot to pull out of what you're saying. First of all, there's a lot of there's some self-pres stuff that we're talking about, but I would say more importantly, there's a lot of mental center orientation, like teasing apart these variables that,
Mm-hmm.
in your words, kind of no one even realizes are variables that are like muddling up the data. You could
Mm-hmm.
say. Um, what is it about that grabs you?
Um, just the idea that if that it's there, and so by virtue of the fact that it's there, I'm curious about it. But also, you can't if you're looking to solve a problem and you're not aware of all of the things that are leading to the problem, then you're not going to be able to solve it. So like, especially when something is having deleterious impacts on people, I think of it as like a small snarl that then becomes a mat, like an unfixable, matted mess. When if
Mm-hmm.
you could start to follow those threads to take it apart, then you can actually start to free up that situation and prevent the bad outcomes.
Yeah. Um, can you give me an example of like a thing, a project, or like a thing you've studied and how you went about it?
Sure. So this is not something that, well, I could try to find something that I've studied, or I could give you a theoretical that I'm not particularly involved in, but it's a pretty well known uh, phenomenon that might be accessible. Which
Sure. Yeah.
okay,
Let's go that
cool.
way. Yeah. Yeah.
So you could look at something like sodium sensitive hypertension in Black people, and like so the increase in heart attacks and strokes and general cardiovascular disease from untreated hypertension. And so what you have now is a population that evolved in a tropical climate. So there's a tendency to have a high genetic prevalence of genes that will help you hold on to water and not so that you don't dehydrate in the tropics.
Mm-hmm.
Now you
Mm-hmm.
take
Mm-hmm.
that population and you transplant them to a temperate environment, and then you start feeding them highly processed sodium filled foods, especially in food deserts, especially in areas, that are
Yeah.
socioeconomically disadvantaged, which we know
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
also something that disproportionately strikes people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you have these people who are potentially genetically predisposed to holding on, to holding on to water and to having blood pressure issues related to that. And you're feeding them the worst of the crap. But then also there's a medical system that makes people rightfully mistrustful. They're not wanting to go to doctors. If they do go to doctors, they're often not getting adequate care. They're not being listened to. And so what happens is a lot of people don't want to go to the doctor for these conditions that they are predisposed to developing. And so a lot of times you'll have talking heads, pushing whatever agenda, who are going to focus on one piece of that puzzle to the exclusion or reduction of the other pieces of that puzzle. But the only way to actually try to figure out the best way to improve this is to kind of honor all of those intricate things that are weaving together to create this problem.
Okay, that was that was an amazing example. Yeah, and is that the kind of, like, when you learned about biomedical anthropology, is that the kind of thing that you understood it to be, and that's what drew you to it? Yeah. Because I can see how in that example there's sort of a systemic issue, and sixes are kind of aware of these kinds of things in the first place. And you have people in the system who are making sense of, like a doctor making sense of a patient coming in a narrow way, and then wanting to kind of both expand the purview, but also like take a microscope and go deeper into the whole systemic problem to see these variables that are not currently being taken into account in the way these people are being treated and taken care of.
Right.
And so, do I have it right?
Yeah, and that's also coming from all angles, right? Because you have folks who are maybe coming from a very sort of SOSP, like more macro perspective, that if you dare to bring up genetics or biology in any way, that's looked on with some skepticism or downright
because of the race
diversion.
component,
right? Because it's as though like it's victim blaming or something like this, and that's not how it's intended at all, But there's it seems like most people have a particular angle of the truth that they are beholden to.
Yes.
And
yeah,
I'm certainly not suggesting that I'm particularly good at not doing that, but I recognize the value in not doing that, and so I try not to, or try to facilitate, that not happening.
One of the things you said in our initial conversation that has stuck with me is that it's not that you don't trust sort of your own mind. I mean, we talk about like stereotype or archetype of six. What's written in every textbook on the Enneagram about sixes is that they struggle with trusting their inner guidance. But what you said was that you don't trust the human mind.
Right.
And so can you say more about that? I mean, this is a really good example into that phenomenon.
Yeah, because it's just there is this inherent subjectivity that, yes, six could learn to lean more on and to be able to say this is where I personally stand on this. But human beings are finite. Our experience is finite. The everything that we use to come to know anything is finite and subjective and beholden to the boundaries of us. So to me, it feels inevitable that something is going to be bigger than any one individual,
Yes. Yeah, I see. Yeah. And when you say bigger, meaning bigger in like the map of reality is bigger than any one human can hold.
Right. The map of reality is always going to be bigger than the part that I could see from where I'm standing. And that's true of anyone.
There is something so important and profound about what you're saying, and I think this is kind of, it goes to like the heart of what the six is holding. Sixes get this rap in the Enneagram world for being indecisive and being internally split, having too many perspectives kind of competing in them at once. But there's also this other thing going on, which is just the humility to recognize that it's not possible to compile a complete enough perspective to have all the information that is available, you could say. And one of the things that is disturbing is kind of like the inherent fear of the mental censor itself, which is that I can't actually know reality. And I can't actually trust my perspectives. And so what you're saying is, it's actually deeply true that one person can't hold a map of reality. You're just looking through one lens, through one perspective on one thing. And when you're looking at, it doesn't matter even how small of a thing you're looking at, there's just no way to know it completely. It's always
Right.
going to remain behind some veil of unfamiliarity.
Right. Or there's going to be an
Yeah.
angle that you can't see it from.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, how, how young were you when you first realized that?
I mean, I had to be quite young because I don't recall a time where I had to realize that. It just was sort of by
Oh,
default.
wow.
Like, of course, this is true.
Oh, that's amazing. You just were always carrying that background awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think in part, and I mentioned this on our initial call, was that, my mother was a 6'7" Kyle, and she could vastly, and then I believe she had a 7 wing also on the 8. So she had a lot of 7 flavor for a very reactive person. So
Yeah.
she would vacillate from like to what seemed to me an absurd level of self-confidence in her perceptions to an absurd level of, needing validation. Neither of which
Mm-hmm.
I understood. It would go from
Okay.
like, of course this is real to please 7-year-old child tell me what is real. you know?
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And just so people know, Kyle is the trifix of 6, 8, 3, right? So 6 wing 7, 8 wing 7, 3 something.
Mhm. So I think that it kind of, my perspective evolved in that context of like kind of always having to be ready to potentially take on the weight, so to speak, of whatever her 7 wing was up to in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something that I am sort of well, I'm fascinated about you is that you, as a 6, aren't really relying that much on other people's points of view to construct your own map of reality, but you do. What do you rely on, or how do you? You said in our call, I would never outsource to your brain.
Right. So it's usually
Yeah.
it's systems of understanding. This is why I'm so big on, like I said in my survey, operational definitions. What does this particular variable signify? What does it mean? What can I rely on this kind of meme or this bite of information to mean or not mean? And then how can I construct around that? So I
Yeah.
definitely utilize things that come from other people's minds, but not without kind of picking and choosing and sound testing each packet of information that I get.
I want to come back to this mom thing because you mentioned basically you were an external anchor for your mom, who's a 6 wing 7,
Mm-hmm.
and can you describe what that was like?
Uh, it was rough, man. No, it definitely brought out a lot of my super ego-y stuff of like, okay, this is my job. I have to do this, and I have to get it right. So it definitely gave me a very strong sense of needing to understand things accurately. Like it really mattered. There was never a point where I was like, I could screw this up. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
it the idea that I could outsource and just say, I don't know, I need to let this fall on to you was foreign to me. Like it just didn't exist, and I didn't have like a
Mm-hmm.
chip on my shoulder about it because I didn't. It didn't even occur to me that somebody might just say I don't know and have that received. You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. It reminds me. I mean, it's very resonant with this other thing you wrote about when people ask you for self-pres advice.
mhm.
So I want to read a little bit about what you wrote there. You wrote, in general, when someone asks me for SP advice that is high stakes and requires decision making, it scares the crap out of me. Do you think I need to call a doctor about this? That question immediately makes me feel like I'm going to kill you with my incompetence if I say no, but simultaneously will cause you to waste your time with my incompetence if I say yes. The amount of responsibility I feel to get the answer right, coupled with the impossibility of predicting all the relevant variables, is instant stress for me. And then I love this. Unfortunately, people tend to trust my assessments of this sort of stuff, so I actually end up in this position fairly frequently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, you do have this aura of someone who's very thoughtful and considered, and so it would make sense to me that people go to you for advice. But then the panic that is induced by someone coming to you for advice and relying on you for their sense making and navigating for
Mm-hmm.
things that are high stakes for them, that produces this like an existential panic, you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of it was, it's a little bit alleviated now that I understand that I can say, I don't know. I can't know the
Mm-hmm.
answer. Here's what I would do. But there was a long time, even well into my adult life, where I didn't think that was an acceptable response, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, so I've started to learn how to like maintain my own boundaries in a way, or just like speak immediately to the limits that I'm experiencing and what I can predict so that it can't fall back on me later. Like it's definitely very sick. So there can be a lot of 6-on-6 crime when there's when a fellow six fixer is the one trying to get that certainty out of me. And I'm like, no, 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 no,
Right.
no, no. Not it.
But it's really pinging on this. It's like the difference between 6-wing 5 and 6-wing 7 is I think really visible in this thing, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
you feel so responsible for developing your own perspective on something, and yet you're faced with the immensity of or the impossibility of that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And and you're not it's not that 7 kind of I don't know, more expansive, dispersive, exploratory, fizzy energy.
Yeah, and
It's more like
it's not
yeah.
distractible. I can't just be like, well, fuck it to any unknown. I that to me is reckless.
Okay, yeah, say more. How do you experience the difference between being 6-wing 5 or 6-wing 7?
Basically, I am utterly indistractable. If I have a sense of threat, which of course in the sixth sense is any uncertainty, any potential for unsoundness, um, I have to keep it sort of in my line of sight at all times. Make sure it's not doing anything shady while I've got my back turned. And I find that 7 has that distractibility uh, to it, where they can just be like, I don't want to think. It hurts to think about this, so I'm gonna just not. Like even 6-wing 7 has the potential, especially if somebody gives them permission to
Mm-hmm.
look away from the target. And I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
like I have that. So there's a persistent kind of lack of ease, and like the hypervigilance I think is more amped up with 6-wing 5, at least for me.
Yeah, and it's more like it's actually on a way it's like more distrusting of anything that potentially could distract you. It's more willing to put up a to block to block out.
Oh yeah, no, it is. There's a reason that 6-wing 5 has that stereotype, right, of like the bunker dwelling survivalist. Like anything, and
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should trust anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does it work for you, like when you're like, I guess I'm really wrestling with this tension of being an attachment core with a rejection wing. And I have that too in the heart sensor through with the 2-wing. But in the mental sensor, something that's always confused me about 6-wing 5 is how you can be so open and receptive and porous to external guidance, at least in a kind of object relational way, but then supported by this opaque, boundaried, um, kind of radically isolated, mentally independence kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how that tension lives.
It almost, to me, I've described it in the past as like aspirational fiveness. Like there's a part of me that recognizes that everything that hurts or is unpleasant or introduces unease into my life is has to do with the way that all of these threads of attachment are pulling on me. And if I could just, it's like that the amputation aspect of rejection, and 5 as being like out
Mm-hmm.
there in space alone. I imagine that it would feel so good, but and I can snip those threads, but it's a conscious thing. Like I recognize 5 as a tool that I use in sixness. But I do have this like kind of pervasive
Mm-hmm.
background sense that if I finally snipped every last thread and went off into space, that nothing would hurt anymore.
um, why not?
Because it's the everything that comes with attachment. You know, basically all discomfort comes from some sort of mismatch between what my psyche needs and what the universe is offering to it, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And so if
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
decoupled myself from my need for the universe to buy in, then those mismatches wouldn't occur, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's like a five-ish flavored, or how to put it. That's well, yeah, that's really good. It's like a 5 flavored fantasy of no longer having to be affected.
Yep.
You know, um, yeah. I want to switch topics here, and I want to ask you about this childhood story that you told me about. I'll just read it to you. You said, when I was 9, my mother told me unexpectedly that I had a 2-year-old half brother on my dad's side. They had been separated, but for less than a year at that point. I was excited about the prospect of a brother and couldn't wait to meet him, but I did do some quick math in my head and said to her at one point in the conversation, I know exactly what went on here, and I don't like it. So, can you take us back to that moment? What was that like?
I mean, I don't remember it as feeling anything but positive for me in the sense that like what I have a brother. This is like magic. This is like Christmas
Mm-hmm.
morning times 10, a whole S human being that I get to know now, like what
Mm-hmm.
could be cooler? But at the same time, I had this like kind of super ego-y recognition that like, uh, it is typically frowned upon for people to go out and have babies with other people without telling their wives. Like that's,
Right.
you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew that my mother obviously she'd been pretty vocal about, the separation being difficult for her and everything that came along with that. Um, and so it was just my way of being like, I know that I'm excited about him, but I'm not forgetting that this sucks, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Mm-hmm.
it was, not really a good look for my dad,
Yeah.
you know.
It's kind of like, I mean, it's the 6 realism and calling out, or I don't know, it's not exactly sounding the alarm, but it's kind of just calling out the thing that is, I don't know, the elephant in the room, I guess, even when
Mhm.
you're 9 years old. And um I actually, it's, I mean, if there's just a little one fix in there too, maybe. Like, no, if trusting from your inner authority that this is not a right thing.
Mhm.
And I wonder if you can talk more about just your experience of having a one fix as a 6. And I guess let me tell you where that question comes from, because you have in your type structure both 5 and 1, which are types that source certainty from within themselves. But being a core 6, you are sort of accidentally, maybe even against your own will, receiving and potentially being influenced by what is coming at you from the universe,
I guess my
guidance
whole
from
role
out
is
there.
like such an important point, and I don't even think I
Yeah,
would have thought to mention it, but it's like I have a lot of certainty, but I
yeah, yeah.
unfortunately recognize the limits of my subjectivity. And I know that like my certainty doesn't mean shit to the universe. But that doesn't stop me from experiencing it. I just have this sort of this inherent obligation to not be so nearsighted about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I definitely have like my sense of right and wrong, so to speak, and my sense of my boundaries, like they feel extremely certain. And a lot of the malleability that is often attributed to attachment in general I find a lot of times leans heavily on nine themes because I'm like, no, that would never happen to me. Like, not in a million years would that happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've often said that I'm like rebar or like a rock in a river. Like I don't go with the flow, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What's an example of a nine attachment thing that you would never relate to?
Um, Basically, anytime you're so this is like it feels kind of cheap, but like a lot of instances in like service situations, somebody not sending their food back in a restaurant, somebody going home with a
Mm-hmm.
haircut they're unhappy with, like anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this is the contract that we've opted into. I'm gonna give you money and you're gonna give me this thing. Like I have no qualms about being like this is not what I ordered. This is not what I paid you to give me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not leaving
Mm-hmm.
here. Like the number of I've said to somebody yesterday, a friend of mine, I was like, the number of times I've had someone on the ropes and been like, I'm so sorry, this is not personal. This is not personal.
Okay.
But like
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
will be like I can be a real Karen. And not in the sense of like mistreating
Uh-huh.
people, disrespecting people, but like I'm going to get what I came for. And like
Mm-hmm.
it might be an annoying warning for all of us, and I am sorry for that, but like I am going to get what I came for. Like I basically if I feel justified in doing so, I have no problem rocking the boat. Like none at all.
Yeah. um okay, I see why that's contrary to nine stereotypes. Or even the nine structure. But um okay, actually I want to bring up this story that you talked about with the bouncer. Can you
Oh
just
my
tell that
god.
story? That's a really good one.
That
Yeah.
was a good one. That was a good one.
Yeah.
So uh that's when I was in Maine with Amber.
Yes.
Our
Yeah.
our resident DJ. Um and so we're at this we're at this bar in Maine having a great time. And I guess we kept going out to smoke and we kept taking our beers with us onto this like back patio. And they did mention a couple of times that they were not a fan of that behavior, but we kept doing it. And then toward the end of the night, we promised that we would not do it again. And we went inside and we got new drinks and we deliberately left them inside this little like foyer area so as to not bring them outside. We did not bring them outside, Josh. I cannot stress to you enough that the beers, icy cold beers, still sweating, were sitting inside. We went outside to smoke, and then the bouncer appears at that back door between us and the beers and says, "Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
you can't come in. You've been bringing your drinks out on the patio all night." I said, "But we didn't bring them out. They're in there. I'm looking at them. They're in there." And he's like, "No, sorry." And I'm like, "I just paid for that beer."
Mm-hmm.
So now he's like standing between me and my newly purchased beer that I've had one tiny sip out of,
Uh-huh.
and which of course is not acceptable. Now you've basically stolen my beer, right? You have it hostage in the
Yeah, you stole it. Uh-huh. Okay.
so
Yeah.
so I'm like, no, I'm going to get my beer. I'm going to finish my beer. We'll finish the beers. We'll be out of here. So I'm like stepping to this guy who's like, foot and a half taller than me, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually he must have gotten tired of me because he just picked me up and deposited me, you know, however many yards away. But like the whole time, I hear Amber going, "Sil, it's okay. It's okay. We'll get new beers. It's fine. Celia, it's fine." I was like, "It's
Yeah.
not fine."
Uh-huh.
So then later on, we told the group chat, I was like, "Yeah, we got kicked out of a bar." And everybody was like, "What did Amber do?" And I was like, "Oh, Amber didn't do it."
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I just want to pause there for a second because, okay, Amber's a set for those who don't know Amber's a 7-wing 8. And so you would think, just reading Enneagram type descriptions, that she would be the one typologically to get you into trouble at a bar. And so, yes, do you have a way to explain that under the structure of 6?
Well, yeah, I'm just like I said, I'm just like a Karen. Like I have no chill. I have no chill.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's not about the structure of 6. I really do think you gotta be. I think the 6-1 is
6-1 stem, yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
a part of it, because I think it's not outside the realm of possibility for other genres of six, but I do think that lack of willingness to go with the flow, is largely attributable to the one fixed. Um,
Yeah, I have to keep burrowing into this topic because it's something that has just brought me a lot of confusion around a six being the type that is aware of the limits of its perspective, and you could say that that's where the quote unquote uncertainty of six comes from, is this um, humble recognition that I can't actually know the full map of reality, and that whatever map I piece together is always going to be incomplete, and I'm always compiling a perspective about something. Um, and then you have one, which is just this kind of referencing such a strong, certain resonant inner authority about something. And so it just seems to me that those two types are in such contrast, but then when you put them together, you get this, as you said, like your word Karen, you get this kind of hyper super ego thing that happens,
right.
that you're willing to go up against a bouncer that's a foot and a half taller than you for probably like an $8 beer, but seeing it as this like abuse of power, and
It
just
honestly doesn't
yeah,
even
go ahead.
reach that far, Josh. It's almost like, because
Okay.
I was saying that I feel beholden to look beyond my subjectivity. So for me,
Yes.
it's such a
Yeah.
visceral and immediate thing. If something is about my subjectivity, right? It is about my subjective experience. It is a me thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any
Mm-hmm.
obligation I have to this six-ish, you know, keeping an eye on everybody's perspective goes straight out the window. I don't give a flying fuck what that bouncer was thinking about or what was going into his calculus in his decision making to stand between me and my beer. It's so utterly irrelevant that it doesn't enter my mind. It's just this
Yeah.
visceral, immediate, no, who the fuck are you? Get out of my way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. 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 What's coming up for me is that I have a lot of experiences with sixes who are nine stem, or sorry, who are nine fix as well. And so what you get with 6-9 is this almost like stutter step, uh even if I'm witnessing something that I deeply believe is wrong, which I think often happens to six, because six is so aware of
Mm-hmm.
just, I don't know, injustices, people who aren't upholding their end of the collective bargain that we've all opted into. um that sixth thing of like, I am aware of the expectations and agreements that are held by the collective,
Mm-hmm.
and this whole thing that we're doing as a society, only, at least is coming from my social self-press perspective, like this whole thing that we're opting into as a society only works if we all uphold our end of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And um I like your use of the word contract. It's kind of like we're opting into a contract. I pay you money, you give me a haircut. That's that kind of thing. Anyway, so six is aware of and holding this stuff, but then we have six supported by nine. There is this sometimes a kind of deflating, right? At least in their fixated states, a kind of like it's required for them to summon themselves into, okay, I'm actually going to take action on this,
Mm-hmm.
because this is, if it reaches some threshold of injustice or something, then they're like, okay, actually, I am gonna make a stink about this.
Right.
But 6-1 has no problem just making a stink.
Right. And if anything, I have to
Yeah,
try to not. Like, I have to be like, this is not work. Like, if I were sober and somebody
yeah, you have to try
handed
not
to
to.
me
Okay, yeah, yeah,
and, you know, an $8 or something, I would probably try to scale it back. But yeah, the effort would be toward like, leave it alone, leave it alone, leave it alone,
yeah. Sorry, just love the image of Amber like holding you back from this bouncer. It's great. Um, yeah. Can you tell me about your tattoos?
Sure. So the ones on my arms, I have, well, a lizard I got for, I won a gift card at a Tricky Tray, and I wanted to put a red stripe down its back, but they wanted to charge me $50 extra for it, which I declined. I got this when I went to visit Crystal in Tucson.
And what is it?
It's a crow or a raven.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, This was my 30th birthday present to myself. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a half sleeve of stars with swirls of black. I just like the idea of like a fantastical shimmering galaxy
Yeah,
with
it's
me.
coming across even in your tie-dye shirt. I guess I asked you about it because
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about all this like structural rigidity that shows up in you in these moments where you can't let something go,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's something of a contrast to the energy that is just visually sort of
Well,
in front of me, like this
because to me,
tie-dye universal cosmic kind of uh
yeah,
thing.
I guess because to me,
Yeah.
it's almost like I have sometimes described myself as the world's most highly articulated nine. Because you know how, like, I was talking earlier about the pixels, pixels of black and white that make up the gray, right? So
Yeah.
you always have to kind of take a microscope to it to see all the right angles. I feel like I do tend to
Mm-hmm.
like move at right angles, like have this binary sense of stop, go, yes, no. But it's
Mm-hmm.
happening at such a high resolution that when you zoom out, you don't see it. So it's like, if you look at fractals, like there is pattern, there's a discernible
Mm-hmm.
mathematical
Mm-hmm.
pattern to fractals, but if you're looking at it, that's not what your eyes are immediately taking in. So to me, it doesn't feel like a contrast because I feel like the ways in which I am rigid and kind of defined in this black and white way they're so tiny that that's not what you're actually going to be looking at when you look at the macro level. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Actually, that just distinguishing between macro and micro is a whole way even to talk about your it's kind of like part of your whole operating philosophy of life. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's present even in the systemic way that we look at the I don't know, how would you describe or is there like a headline for that issue with the health issue that you talked about in the beginning?
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know what the headline would be because it kind of reminds me of what my friend said to me with like the what else is there? It's life. Like the head like that's it's the experience of embodied life. I had a thought. Now I'm trying to remember it. Yeah, I mean basically I think like the line to nine work for me is to put down the microscope, and just live in not even the big picture, but the picture that's in front of me without getting out the microscope and getting too close.
Oh man, I love that you just said that. That was a huge moment just for me right now. Okay, because and that's another distinction between 6.5 and 6.7
Yeah. I
is
say
that
microscope versus telescope a lot of times with that.
that's so good. Yeah, that's so good. Um, so it's an effort for you to zoom out from the microscope
Mhm. Yeah.
because there's always a compulsion to whenever you're seeing something, you're like, okay, in order to understand whatever's in my field of view right now, I have to understand all the pixels that are making up this.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that would be the whole metaphor, right? Of maybe 6.5. It's like
Mhm.
I'm seeing some picture. Yeah, maybe it's like a picture of a deer or maybe some shadowy shape or something like that, and I'm going in zooming into each pixel of black and white
Mhm.
or hue to understand how it.
Right, which
Okay,
is then
I'm getting
utterly
it. Yeah,
overwhelming because you can, if something is this big, but you're looking at it at a million times
yeah,
resolution, it's like your whole life to cover, 1 foot of
yeah,
reality,
yeah,
metaphorically speaking.
yeah, and also you know um, things are infinitely zoom inable.
Hmm. Right, right. There's this idea of like, okay, well, I covered this magnification. Now I can just go to the next one.
Yeah, I mean fractal is a great metaphor for it too because like have you ever zoomed into a Mandelbrot set?
I don't. I may have, but it's not. I can't call to mind immediately.
Okay. Yeah, it's. I mean, when I was almost a physics major, we used to do that kind of thing. At like sit at a computer and just like a Mandelbrot set is um, it's a visual display uh, of a formula of complex numbers, but it's cool because it's like it's got this weird looking shape, and then when you zoom in, it's as if it repeats that same shape, but slightly differently, and you can zoom in infinitely.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of like how um, in between the numbers 1 and 2 is an infinite amount of decimals. You can go out however far you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So 7 is that quality of like, well, 1 plus, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4 and go all the way up to infinity that way.
Mm-hmm.
In that expansive,
But I
like,
could spend
let's
my
just
whole
keep
life
counting
between 1
higher.
and 2.
You could spend your whole life between 1 and 2. That's the 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was wild. That whole thing just clicked for me about like, okay, I'm getting 6.5 now. I want to bring up a couple other things that you said. So, injustice and corruption is viscerally intolerable. I guess we sort of covered that in the sense of like talking about the one fix, but is there more there?
I don't know that we covered it exactly. I just, when I think about that statement, I think specifically about this one time when I was a kid, seeing like an oil spill on TV and just watching all of this oil pouring into the ocean. And like, so there's this, number one, there's this very valuable substance that we need to run our world being wasted and also destroying everything it touches while it's being wasted. And
Yeah.
I mean, that might as well have been like my own aorta pumping out like like I almost cried. Like just I
Yeah.
couldn't watch it. It was literally like watching a living thing that I loved bleed to death. So when
Wow.
I
Yeah.
say viscerally intolerable, like that's what I mean is I
Mm-hmm.
see things being broken by neglect or broken by corruption, and it's like I'm watching something beautiful die. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, it never occurred to me that like other people didn't weren't affected in quite the same way around that stuff, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But it ties right in with another thing that I think I mentioned in the survey, that like my sense and
Mm-hmm.
fixation is that like I'm on a battlefield and there's always n+1 severed arteries bleeding that I can keep pressure on. And so
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
super ego kind of compulsion to do my part has to do with that, of like this world is dying faster than I can keep up, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also it's worth mentioning also that you have some 2 in your type structure as well. So
Mhm.
you have all 3 superego types swirling around.
Yeah. And this
Yeah.
is where I do think that the one wing two kind of has legs, because if I think of my overlay, you know,
Mm-hmm.
952 doesn't really register like resonate as much as like 52 with that extra dose of 2.
Up to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. On that topic of there are always too many arteries bleeding that I can have fingers on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is that like your constant underlying sensibility, or is it like as you look out at the world at whatever?
I mean, I think I should be like thanking my lucky stars that I'm not social dumb, because I have to like put myself in a certain mind to get out of the relatively like smaller, more constricted bubble of SPSO. So it's not. I mean, it is easily accessible. I just have to like remember that the world is out there and it's on fire, you know. But so I think I'm pretty good at triaging what I let into my consciousness at all, and it's in part because I know that if I did let myself keep everything in my view, I would go insane. You know, so I kind of triage a lot of it out.
Yeah. Um, but it brings up kind of something that like when we talked earlier, I asked you if you related to being a porcupine, and you said first of all that you already self-describe as a
Well,
porcupine.
and other people have described me as such as well.
Yeah, yeah. But you also use the metaphor of being like a bottle of soda that's been shaken,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's just this constant sort of inner pressure that you're operating under. And I wonder if that pressure, like, what's the relationship between just having all the superego stuff in your type structure and that pressure?
Uh, that's a good question. I I think a lot of it is, you know, reactivity, attachment, and pro-social elements all contrasting each other. Like So part of it is like me knowing that I would probably be more palatable with a 9 fix, and I would probably have more ease in my own life with a 9 fix. So part of the pressure comes from knowing that I have this internal rigidity and still trying so hard to not, like um go off. But then
So you're sort of are you self-censoring, like to
not
or
on purpose.
self-editing in
It's
some
like
kind of way? Yeah.
another analogy is that I sometimes feel like I'm wearing a seatbelt throughout my life. Like there's this inherent stop that I notice in particular 8 fixers and people with 8 wings and like people with 8 present in their, because I have no 8 at all,
No, 8.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And I
Uh-huh.
think that's where that forward pressure release comes from, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's good. Yeah.
Um,
8 is like expansion,
yeah,
permission, life force
exactly. I
permission.
don't have permission
Yeah.
to expand, but I have a lot in there against that rigidity. So there's the
Hmm.
seatbelt analogy, there's the contents under pressure analogy, and then there's also I say that like 6-1 is almost like being in an Iron Maiden. So yes, I'm a porcupine, but like I promise you, those spikes also point inwards toward me.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So there's this
Yeah, yeah.
like, a
Yeah.
lot of themes around inherent restriction,
Hmm.
um, and it's not the way that like 9, 9 can be self-censoring, but it's ease. It's actually making space for the thing that for the irritant. You know what I mean? And it's making the best of it. Whereas I'm not
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
making space. There's not space for it. It's like it's a rock in my shoe, or like I said, like I'm not,
Hmm.
you know, reflexively expulsive, but it doesn't mean that I'm not constantly clocking the wrongness or the irritation
Yeah.
because I am.
Yeah. 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 Okay. That's okay. That's really good. I, I have someone in my life very close to me who is, I think, very close to, if not exactly, your type structure. And when my experience of her is that she is trying so hard to be responsible, to cover all her bases, to do the right thing, um, to call out when things are going wrong, and she feels, in my view, like often alone in that project.
Mhm.
And there is there's a way that you know all that so okay, so first of all, that itself is a formula for a tremendous amount of psychological pressure to be building up. um
Yes.
and then if you let's see how to put this, like um if she recommends a place for us to go to dinner,
Hmm.
then there is this aura where it's like if you were to recommend something else or say, I don't know about that place, that you're like a little nervous to step on the wrong landmine because it's kind of like you feel like there might be an explosion around, like, I don't fuck, well, okay, okay, well, you decide,
Hmm.
because there's this. And as she's gotten older, there's been a lot more pressure release. Like she's found the valves where she can kind of not be, I don't know, so hyper pressurized in that inner,
Hmm.
hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot more like serenity and, I don't know,
Ease
what it's
maybe.
blossomed into. Yeah, ease. What it's blossomed into is more of like a refined regalness. I would say it's kind of cool. It's like wow, this is like a delicate, refined regalness, but also she lives very much in her spine.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
um, where am I going with this? I am. I'm thinking about how 6, if you could, you can't actually do this, but if you could just like have a pure 6 without any other influence, like from a wing or other fix, but just like pure 6 energy, it's like the reason that 6 is and at least my theory that I like to run by you, that reason that 6s get defensive and can be kind of quick to trigger is because they're basically like uh, aware of the expectations that are on them or that a responsible person around here should hold themselves to.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to do it. It's taking a lot of energy to do it. And they're, but they're not even, let's see, maybe this isn't true for one fix, but my experience of a lot of sixes is that they're not even sure if they agree with those expectations, but they're trying to hold them anyway. And then and then that's producing all this inner pressure. And then you poke that. And if you poke it, it's like this unstable, reactive, like a nuclear substance, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely think there's truth to that. And I think there's also a way in which, like, and this, probably is happening in some form with all of the attachment types, but like, it's not like we are oblivious to the ways in which we are responding to more than ourselves. So it's like, I'm over here busting my ass, accommodating your subjectiveness in addition to my own. But,
Mm-hmm.
the feedback that you get is just often an indicator that the other person is not doing the same for you. You know?
Okay, there it is, the reciprocity thing.
Right.
So
It's like I'm contorting myself for this to
yeah.
be an us thing. And then you're like, I don't like your you thing. Well, I don't like your you thing either. That's why I'm trying to make an us thing. You know?
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. Another six with a one fix that I interviewed, her phrase was resentful accommodation.
I could see
Yeah.
that. I try hard. I firmly believe that any resentment that we experience is a result of some kind of unresolved thing within ourselves, because resentment happens when you offer something that you didn't want to offer or couldn't afford to offer. So I try to be very intentional about never doing that. It's not to say that it never happens. Obviously it happens. But like, when I feel myself feeling resentful, usually that's a conversation that I have to have with me about how I let that
Yeah.
happen, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, in the course of your life, what has helped you, first of all, zoom out from the pixels and also um, cultivate serenity or equanimity or relax?
Benzos. No, I mean, most people will tell you that I'm not particularly good at these things. I'm not a very serene person. Part of it is having a sense of humor about the absurdity and, just
Yep.
holding, it's hard for me to let go of these things. So I hold them loosely. I think about that Oscar Wilde quote that's like, life is too important to be taken seriously. I think that was Oscar
Yeah, it sounds like him.
Wilde. So that's a big part of it, is just like maintaining this meta awareness of how absurd all of this is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and keeping like a strong sense of play. Um, but I'll be honest with you, like it's a struggle for me to, be in my body, to find serenity, to just calm the fuck down. When everybody's like, we don't think you have a nine wing because you have absolutely zero chill. Like, you have less chill
Mm-hmm.
than anybody I've ever met in my life. Like, it's probably valid. I don't have chill.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, So yeah, I kind of want to ask. I'm curious about your current life situation and how things unfolded for you to be here, and to kind of track the decisions that you made through the lens of your type structure to kind of get where you are right now.
Okay. So now, see, here's where we do get into resentful accommodation. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
so I after I went to New Mexico, I was like, I'm never moving back to New Jersey again. But
Mm-hmm.
I received a lot of pressure from my mother and sister that I should come home to New Jersey, um, and help with the household. My sister, who is a 9 wing 8 Bermuda, probably very very similar to you, except for the 8 wing. I think
Mm-hmm.
she's 9 wing 8, 3 wing 2, 6 wing 7 in that order. And she's SPSO,
Mm-hmm.
but I call her the everyone whisperer. She runs a bar and she sells real estate and everybody loves her.
Mm-hmm.
But she's extremely uh super ego and attachment and like self erasing, and she just has never lived anywhere else. And she and my mom had a sort of codependent relationship, and it was always sort of the two of them against me because I was willing to be a pain in the ass. Um, So I was, in New Mexico, and it was like, you got to come back and help with the household, blah, blah, blah. So I did that for a while, anticipating that I would leave again eventually. And I did leave, and I went to grad school. Um, and I really did not think that I was going to come back here after grad school. But shortly before I graduated, I was home visiting actually for Mother's Day and got a lecture for how I was like neglecting my mother, neglecting the family,
Okay.
was not doing my part, was ungrateful and selfish and self-absorbed and all of these things for being in grad school and living 3 hours away at the age of 30, that I had left my childhood home to go to graduate school was selfish and, this, that, and
Wow.
the other thing. Um, and to the point where like I remember being on my knees sobbing and like begging my mother to forgive me. And during that conversation, I promised that I would move home as soon as I graduated and start helping out and whatever.
Wow.
I've actually gone back to
Okay.
that a lot over the years, and it makes me so angry because I could never, like, a big part of the way my 3-wing 2 especially I think operates is that like you're never going to be on your knees in front of me. I'm always going to tell you to get up. You do not deserve to be on the ground. I don't care who you are, like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that leaves like a really bad taste in my mouth that like they
Yeah.
were okay with that.
Do you know what type your mom?
617 Kyle. So 617 8.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that's right. That's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And so anyway, but so she was underemployed. She had a lot of mental health stuff going on. Um, but I don't. It's not necessarily relevant to get into all that stuff. But I promised that I would come back. And so I did, and I fell into quite a depression because I couldn't find work in the area, and I was not using my degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up also underemployed. I had to take an AmeriCorps position, which, if you're familiar with, it's basically like it's not paid work. It's really like volunteering with a stipend. So I was working full time plus, but making like $350 a week or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then about like a year after I was home, my sister was like, I went on Indeed and look at all these jobs in Washington, D.C. I don't know why you didn't just like go out and, you know, like basically like giving me this like retroactive pep talk of like, why didn't you just go out and chase your dreams? And I was like,
Okay.
what? You know what I mean? Like, it's like she had no idea that the time that she like had me on the floor, promising to do better and come like there was no connection in her mind between her tormenting me that day and badgering me
Mm-hmm.
into like sacrificing, and coming home. Like in her mind, that just didn't exist. Whereas for
Right.
me, that
Right.
was
Right.
like such a big deal. I'm here because you told me I should be here, and it's not like I lose my sense of my own desires or it's and I think this speaks to the resentful accommodation. Like I was
Yeah.
always aware of what I was sacrificing and why.
Mm-hmm.
I was just opting into that sacrifice. Uh,
Why do you think that the pressure brought you to your knees?
uh, I think because like I had a lot of my identity, was wrapped up in being that certainty for my, you know what I mean, in like the way that I showed up for my mother and my
Yeah.
family. And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think that's really the main thing. And there's this whole like, idea of like, 3 girls on their own. Like, there's a lot of that sort of family loyalty, and also like a creeping sense that I had that like I had already, basically this idea that I was being selfish while the two of them were suffering from my selfishness. And even though
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
objectively didn't believe that to be true, I had this sense that if I went my way, I would potentially lose them, and I didn't want to lose
Mm-hmm.
them. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't acquiescing to their skewed perspective in terms of changing my perspective, but I was acquiescing to their skewed perspective in doing what they wanted. like all the while
Yeah,
like
that's fascinating. So you retained mental independence. You didn't absorb their point of view, but you did
but I knew
act
that
in
I
alignment
couldn't
with it.
change their minds, and I knew that
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't want they weren't it wasn't worth risking losing those attachments. And so
Yeah. So there it is. That's okay. That's attachment. First of all, we should just
mhm,
name that. But
yes, absolutely.
and also there's a six duty sensibility, duty
Or
to the thing that I feel responsible to, and a sense of identity around being responsible to this. I don't know, this core group that I care about. But I'm fascinated by this dynamic of, or I guess it's like kind of an important hair to split around understanding six, where it's like I'm not actually getting washed out by your perspective. I'm not taking on your perspective as my own.
right.
But in order to maintain relationship, I am demonstrating to you that I'm willing to act in alignment with your perspective,
Yes.
as a kind of, um, yeah, relational overture. Like
Yeah,
I don't know if
because
you would put it in this.
I
Yeah, go
have
ahead.
my rules of engagement and you have your
Mm-hmm.
rules. And
Mm-hmm.
if I get the sense that I can't engage with you if I don't play by your rules, then if it is a high value enough attachment, then I will at least try to play by your rules. And that is
There you
where
go.
the resentful
Yeah.
accommodation, I think, can come in. Because
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
know, again, I always am so aware of what I'm sacrificing to play by your rules. And then there's this
Mm-hmm.
sense of like, I guess I'm just not important enough for you to try to play by my rules. Like, have you ever thought about playing by my rules?
There you go. There
You
you
will.
go. And that's that whole, and there, yeah. So that's how six gets into, uh, well, I don't know. I don't know that in your case I would name it exactly like this, but it feels like the victim mentality of six, where it's like I did this for I accommodated you, and now you didn't sort of reciprocate,
Well,
and so I
that's that,
feel
and that I do. I mean, I think that again, anytime we're feeling victimized, it's a conversation to have about what within ourselves about what we allowed to happen. And I'm not saying that
right.
again, like this happens to me all the time, but I will
Yeah.
never put the onus on someone. If I fail to protect myself from you, that's on me. 1,000,000%,
Mm-hmm.
that's on me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
that's like part of the like rejection piece and the aspirational fiveness, and like there will never be like you wronged me, and as such you suck. It's more
Okay.
like you wronged
Yeah.
me. I left myself open to be wronged by you, and that's a chink in my armor that I need to address and fix and not let
Yeah.
happen again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So where are you at now with the whole emotional journey?
uh, I mean, my mom passed away a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely some lack of resolution there, but I don't know. I mean, she could have lived to be 100. I don't anticipate there would have been, resolution
Yeah.
that's satisfying to
Mm-hmm.
me, to come out of that. Um, but right now I'm kind of trying to focus on the present and where I'm going next. We're talking about getting the house ready to put up for sale, and then I'll move out into a space that's my own. Um, I've tried this year in particular to like get away from living for that future because it doesn't seem like it's going to be happening expeditiously.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been investing in like I'm building a garden in my backyard and like
Mm-hmm.
being really thoughtful and like making that yard a place that I want to be, like a little oasis.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, but I'm kind of just doing my SPSO thing. I work, I come home, I chat with my friends, and
Mm-hmm.
about it. But I this is not going to be forever. This is just sort of I'm kind of keeping time, but also with an eye on the clock. Like, I that I
Yeah.
want momentum to start happening again soon, but I got to be strategic about it.
Towards what?
Towards getting out of this house,
Okay.
really. But
Yeah.
it's kind of rough because my sister is a 918. My brother-in-law is a 9 of some flavor. I'm unsure on his wing, but we got two Bermuda 9s that are down there, and very no sense of urgency whatsoever to change the situation. And it can get a little bit sticky trying to have conversations with my sister because ever since my mom got sick and passed away, like we have this like fragile peace that we never had growing up. We were always at each other's throats. I mean, we would throw down. Like, never mind a Kyle. Like we got into physical altercations well into adulthood. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
but uh, we're a lot quieter now. But there's still a lot of mistrust. There's still a lot of unease. We're very different people, and we have a lot of baggage in our relationship toward each other. So, like, I try very hard not to press on her around the sale of the house because it inevitably goes someplace. It leads to tension. It leads to conflict, even if it doesn't lead to a screaming match. I always leave off feeling worse than I started.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
weird because this is not like while we are talking about how very impacted I am by this stuff with my family, like this is not stuff that I tolerate from anybody else. You know what I mean? Like this is I would not constrict myself in this way for anyone but my mother and my one sister.
Right. Right.
You know?
And it's a pretty significant restriction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of the restriction right now is that like I can't afford a down payment on a house until
Okay.
get we sell this one, and
Right. So it's practical. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Like
Okay.
if I wanted to move into an apartment, I would just do that. But that's for
Mm-hmm.
me. That's I don't want to waste my money in that way.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm
I
not
see. Yeah.
staying right now for any reason other than I need the equity from this house out of it. But it's like a game of Jenga trying to coax it out.
I see. I see. I see. Yeah. Um. Okay. And then the kind of job that you would be after.
Uh, so ideally, I would love to do something more creative, more on my own schedule. I got balls
Mm-hmm.
saying that I'm on the clock right now, but um, where I really am only answering to myself. And a big thing is I want to experience work where I'm making, and this is so like six. I want to make things more good instead of less bad. I've always had jobs
Okay.
where I wish
Yeah.
I could make things
Uh-huh.
less bad. And obviously, a
Okay.
children's cancer hospital, like you can't get more, you know, mitigating of something crappy than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I also know that I'm never gonna earn anywhere near what I'm making doing any other kind of work. So it's,
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna be a balancing act of like, do I want the work week, my ideal work week, or do I want my ideal weekends and vacations and to have the resources to do more in my off time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a chance
Yeah.
that I'll stay for a while at this job because I do have a lot of flexibility. I do appreciate my coworkers. It's a job that is like a good blend of challenging and doable, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
as nine to
Yeah.
fives go, this is not a bad one to have. But
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
I guess I would say that my what I'll be doing is not my number one priority. I don't have as much of a compulsion to change my work situation as I do to change my living situation. So it's like I'll hammer that out and
Okay.
I'll take it from there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I guess where the question about the job came from is just it feels to me like in your um I hate to be so presumptive in saying this, but it feels to me like your I don't know soul purpose, your soul like your soul's purpose is this systemic investigation and improvement and uncovering the hidden variables and this kind of a thing. I just wonder, are you engaged in that now in that kind of in some kind of a
I
way?
mean, I think that again, it's more depth over breadth. Like it feels more like my soul's purpose to uncover it piece by piece for like one person, for whom I have a
Mm-hmm.
very important relationship,
Sure. Yeah.
or just my little corner of the world, one plant that I'm trying to grow that is not thriving, whatever it is.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't really have this like broader overarching societal or like
I guess
what
that's
your
my
community
social self-pres also
yeah,
projection.
like also like a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, oh, this job is so like, you know, hand in glove fit for your type. You must have really looked long and hard for it. And the reality is I didn't. I couldn't find a job. I needed a
Yeah.
job. I was
What
applying.
is the specific thing you're doing in your job?
So I am a clinical trial coordinator in
Mm-hmm.
a pediatric oncology clinic. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, if a kid comes in with a certain kind of cancer that there's a trial open for, I will manage all of the logistics around that.
Got
Um,
it. Okay. Yeah.
and I work with
Yeah.
the IRB to get the studies opened and like all that kind of stuff. I'm also on the IRB because I'm a joiner. Uh,
Okay. And the
I'm a
IRB
recovering
is,
joiner anyway.
yeah. What's the IRB?
It's a institutional review board, so it's the ethics board that reviews any human subjects research to make sure that it is ethical and not like exploitative of patients.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I can see why people would say this is like hand and glove fit for your type structure.
And I didn't even have to
But
like I'm the first clinical research coordinator to ever join the IRB at St. Joe's. So that
oh,
was something that's not part of my job. This was like an extracurricular thing that I did.
you just couldn't. Is it a volunteer position?
Yeah, I mean, but it happens during the workday, so it's not like I'm
Okay.
having extra time.
Okay.
And it's one like we meet monthly.
Uh
Um,
huh. And what's the reason you joined?
I'm nosy, and I want to have a if there's a meeting happening where stuff is being discussed, I want to know about it, and I want to have my say. You know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because the IRB's relevance to your. So can you just explain like the
Yeah. So
structural, like how does
basically,
it all fit together?
whenever you open up a human subjects research study anywhere, whether it's an academic institution, a hospital, it goes through institutional review board review to make sure that this all happened after World War II and after the, you know, all of the horrendous crimes against humanity that the Nazis committed and the human subjects research that was done during the Holocaust and stuff like that to make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. So it's like,
Okay.
okay, well, like you're not torturing people. You know what I mean? Like it's basically to ensure that any research that's being done, any scientific research that's being done on human subjects is being done respectfully is being it's not going to be harmful, it's going to be, you know, not exploitative, not coercive, you know, people are
Mm-hmm.
able to consent willingly and you know like, all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it. Got it.
um yeah,
Okay. I mean, it's a very just to name it, it's like a very superego structure kind of a thing. You know, to have joined that.
it is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
very super ego structure kind of a thing. um but you know it's also
But it's I guess it's what's fascinating to me is that you chose to join it. I know you're being kind of I don't know, cheeky that it was cheeky that it was you're just being nosy, but did it also come from a sense of
it comes from a
systemic
sense of like I
improvement
was
and
saying earlier how
yeah.
in my experience most stakeholders have a very myopic view of what's important.
Yeah.
And so I've
Mm-hmm.
always said that, you know, IRB should have more anthropologists. And even though it's
Uh-huh.
not the work that I'm doing right now, I am an anthropologist in terms of the way that I think and what my unique
Yes, I see.
offering
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Right.
So I am being nosy but in this, with a particular eye toward what are they missing, you know? But I
Mm-hmm.
also, there is a way that you know, I am somebody who used to be very prone to padding my resume. You know,
Yeah.
I like I like having things on my CV. I like
Yeah.
saying I did this, I was part of this, I had a leadership role in this, and I do that much less compulsively now. Like back in high school, you know, I think I was a
Some
member
prefix
of
stuff
every
there. Yeah.
club that came onto my radar. You know what I mean?
Oh, you're talking my language. I know.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah, I
I
was there
know,
too.
because
Yeah.
this is 3-wing two. This is the sickness that is 3-wing two.
I know.
Um,
Yeah, it's a disease, but
and so
yeah.
that's what I mean. That's really what it is. That's the main reason that I joined. For the shorthand of it is like
Okay.
it's
Okay.
because
Okay.
of
So
the
it's just okay.
3-wing
That's funny.
two playing with everything
Yeah.
else. Um, but let me tell you, being on the IRB of a small Catholic institution is really anyway. Surprisingly, it's not actually a lot of fun. It's not my favorite thing to do.
Oh,
Um,
surprisingly.
but
Sorry.
the bigger point that I was trying to make was that like I didn't go out of my way to find this job. I in fact when I interviewed, because they had like posted a generic job description that was like data manager, clinical research. I was like, I can do that. I'm qualified to do that. I can enter data.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went for the interview, and my now manager was like, as you know, this is in the pediatric oncology department. And I was this close to being like, oh, nice meeting you. Bye. You know what I mean? I literally almost didn't even stay for the interview. So this is very far from like, oh, I feel compelled. Like,
Because
well, because I don't know that I wanted to work in pediatric oncology. That's
sure,
not everybody is cut out for that. And I didn't know at the time whether or not I was. I also don't particularly like kids, I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
But I stuck it out, and by the end of that interview, I was just like, I actually said to my manager, I was like, I really want this job. Like, I just really
Wow.
like we all, like me and my
Uh-huh.
manager and my principal investigator, who I work closely with in the day-to-day sense. We all like just clearly, I hit it off with both of them so well. Like, it just felt right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so now I've been there for 7 years, which is by far the longest I've ever had any job. That's another thing that everybody's like, yeah, 6, so steadfast, you work the same steady. Like, when I was hired there at the age of 34, I had previously never held any job for longer than 21 months in my whole life.
Wow. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah.
So it's just interesting because people, meeting me now that I'm in this, like, admittedly very SPSO super ego-y role that I have been in for years. Everybody's like, yes, this is of course who you are. And I'm like, well, I've actually only been this for like 45 minutes, but like, it does fit,
Earlier when you said the IRB is surprisingly not fun to be on, were you referencing, or let's see, were you coming from the place that you, when you joined, thought it actually might be, or were you referencing a more like collective assumption that it probably wouldn't be and being tongue in cheek?
More collective. I mean, I do think I had like an element of like nerdy hope that there would be something a little bit less desolate than what I experienced. But as it turns out, it is, there's nothing. But I mean, I think the IRB of like a really active research university would, like, I think that IRBs can actually get to think about compelling things. It's just that that this little Catholic hospital without a major research focus is not a place where that's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. Okay. I have one more question about 6-wing-5 in general, and then we'll see what else is here. The word cagey comes up with 6-wing-5. Do you relate to that word, and do you have a sense of like why that gets pinned?
Yes, I think I do relate to it. It's weird because I actually, when I was first realizing that I was a 6, I just assumed I was a 6-wing-7. This was like, I'm fun, I'm funny, I'm easygoing, and then of course all of the looks from everybody who's ever known me,
Okay. Yeah.
I am funny, okay. I am funny, but I am far from easygoing. I don't think I realized how like cagey, squirrely, all of these sorts of things that I could come across as, because also I think being image last maybe plays a role in this. I'm never thinking about how I'm being received, right? So I think there's a lot of me retreating into that withdrawn 5-ish-ness as my to come examine the threat in private, where I can get it alone and put all my attention on it. I think there's a way in which that abrupt withdrawing can come across as cagey, but I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to not touch you. I'm trying to keep you from touching me. Like, I don't know how to articulate better.
Yeah. And are you, I guess my understanding or my felt sense of how the word cagey fits with 6-wing-5, and you tell me if this feels right. It's like, well, first of all, 5 can be secretive. 5 is often keeping its own thoughts to itself and processing. It's kind of like looking through the world through that periscope and kind of, but still hidden back here in its laboratory, with some some psychological distance receded from whatever it's participating in. And so you have that kind of private internal withdrawal going on, but you also have a 6 core that is consciously or unconsciously aware of its potential influenceability, or its, I don't know, just what happens when you open yourself up to contact with someone else's mind. And I don't know, I see it maybe as like a self-protection mechanism, or like a withdrawal into secrecy and privacy.
Like, why are you looking at me? What do you want? What do you
Yeah,
do?
that.
You know
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Why are you here? What are your intentions?
Yeah. So, because my experience of you, I mean, you're so open on this, even just in this conversation, it feels like it's almost like there's no topic off limits and stuff like. And so, I was just trying to square your easefulness with these kinds of topics that we're exploring.
I mean,
and
it's easy because I just won't share what I don't want to share. Like, I don't feel like I have conscious hangups about this. I remember, well, there's somebody in the shared social group that we all know that like tends to ask extremely provocative questions on purpose, and a lot of people get weird about it, and I never got weird about it. And one time we were talking about it, and I was like, I'm just not going to answer. Like, you can ask me 1,000 times. If I'm not going to answer the question, I'm just not going to answer the question. I don't have any shtick about it, you know?
Oh man. Okay. See, that feels like another important distinction between 6-week 7, 6-week 5, because it's like, let me see how to articulate that. In my words, it would be something like 6 is, or let me say it like this. 5 is just kind of going along, not referencing or feeling responsible to other people's expectations or worldviews or ways of thinking. And so when someone says to a 5, hey, you really should do this, 5 is sort of like opaque to that. But in a subtle, most of the time people aren't giving explicit shoulds. They're just kind of implicit in the interaction. And so, for example, when someone asks you a question, the implicit should is that you should respond to that question.
Right.
And so 5 is sort of like just enough removed, sort of back here from those expectations or those shoulds, that it's kind of like it can opt in or not opt in according to its own inner compass. 6, on the other hand, is sort of maybe awash in those expectations, and so it's sort of, I would expect that for a 6, when a 6 is asked a question, there's an immediate like a sense of responsibility that I have to answer. But paired with the 5 wing, it's kind of like a little bit more back here.
Yeah, see, I have no sense of responsibility to answer, but I do have a sense of the expectation coming from the other. Like, I don't have any, like, absolutely zero pull to give them what they're asking for, but I recognize that they're asking for it.
So maybe that's the split. Like 5, like core 5 would almost like not even be aware of the expectation. I think they're so
okay. Right, they're not even acknowledging the contract that is coming from that question being.
That's it.
Whereas I'm not signing this contract. You know?
That's it. That's why 5-6 often tends to be like more, I don't know, in conversation, more like weirdly like effusive, you could say, than 6-5. 6-5 tends to be more private, because 6-5 is, I don't know, aware of the expectations and existing in relationship to them, whereas 5 is sort of not, you could say.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
But then 6-7, in contrast, like 7 is, I don't know, excited by the idea of
the potentiality.
You know, something to explore here.
You know.
Yeah. Yes, and exactly. Yes, and you asked me a question. Sure, let's get into it. And that paired with the 6, it's kind of like the 6 awareness of expectation. It's almost like maybe playing with it, or.
And there's also the frustration versus rejection. You know, if you enter something into the map that I don't like, I'm going to tell you that I don't like it. Why are you asking that question? You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like, yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yes, the cutoff.
It's funny because I remember even this was not about a mental construction thing. This was about doing something like literally and ask. But we were at one of the zones, you and I, and you wanted to go up to the roof. Now,
Oh yeah, I
I don't
remember.
mind heights, but I don't like feeling unstable at heights.
Mm-hmm.
And so you wanted me to climb the fire escape ladder up to the roof, and you must have asked me about 3 or 4 times. You were undeterred. You just and I finally I was like,
Okay.
I'm not climbing that ladder. It isn't
Okay.
happening. And then you were like, oh, okay. But I was just like, what is?
Yeah.
But there wasn't like we weren't gonna. I had no intention of arguing with you about it. Like it just was not occurring.
Right. It was just a certainty. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's just gonna keep asking, and I'm gonna keep not doing it.
It's funny. It's making me
But
laugh.
I
Okay.
went inside. I
Yeah.
ended up going inside the house and finding an alternate way up to the roof so we could all hang out on the roof, and it was delightful. But yeah, that always makes me laugh when I think about it. I was like, oh, he doesn't. He thinks that this might actually change at some point.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's good. Okay, let me look at my notes. Or actually, is there anything that I haven't asked you about yourself that feels important, or about 6.5 in general?
Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head, honestly.
Okay.
I feel like we
Yeah,
did a nice organic like tour.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I have one other thing I want to ask you about, which is, and this maybe is in relation to the caginess thing, but you said in our previous call, quote, I just can't make a mess. Like you won't let yourself make a mess. And again, I feel like that's in some way a contrast to 6.7. Not that every 6.7 is just willing to make a mess all the time, but there's a little bit more of a buttoned up quality to 6.5.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever feel like I can make a mess and leave it. Like I'm not saying I'm incapable of making. I'm very capable of making a mess, but it's not okay.
I think let me give this more context. So because we were talking at the time about the bottle of soda that's been shaken and wearing a psychological seatbelt, and then you also said that you can feel your emotions bumping up against the edge of you, where this is part of like in relation to all that inner pressure that's building, but you don't kind of like let it out in this big explosive kind of way. And I think that's where this phrase I can't just make a mess kind of comes from. Which I'm hearing some of the one self-control and that also 6.5 kind of privacy maybe, but I just wonder if there's anything else in there that feels useful to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is the things that are present, but again, it's also the absence of 8. You know,
okay,
it is the absence of, or even the absence of 9. It's the absence of, because 9 also 9 is not expanding by force, but 9 is expanding to accommodate. You know,
yeah,
like 1 is the gut type that is the most obviously restricting. Like we talk about that a lot, but I just like I feel compelled to keep everything as close as possible to me, to not leave remnants of myself strewn about.
Yes, that makes sense because
number 1, I don't want them out there uncontrolled for other people to trip over and influence or be influenced by, you know. And number 2, because of this like super ego-y, like that's the way that this works is that we clean up after ourselves, and that includes our psychological messes. That includes our energy.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. I think I feel kind of complete here. How about you?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. What was this like for you?
It was fun. I liked it. I was a little bit wary at the beginning when we were having so many tech issues. I was like, are we going to manage to find our groove, or is this going to,
Yeah.
But I think we definitely did.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you rolling with the punches too. I was a little worried there myself. Yeah. But yeah, no, thank you for your openness. And this was a really good conversation for me because I have, like I said, a 6.5 who's very close to me. So I feel like I learned a lot here. And just also that 6-1 stem, just that pairing and that whole conversation around having an inner certainty, but in the context of 6, I think it's a really useful and important distinction to kind of triangulate into what 6 actually is.
Right. Like where that beholdenness to externals kind of ends.
Yeah. And also just how, like, where the openness and receptivity to external guidance also ends, or what the limits of it are, or how that gets flavored or shaped or something with other influences in your type structure.
And I think it also speaks to the inevitability and resignation that can come with attachment, because there's a lot of times people who don't really understand attachment for whatever reason can think that like it is a decision that we want to outsource, that we are, consciously feeling like we need, unlike the hexads, we need this more input. It's really it is this way in which I know, because I know what my one fix feels like, right? And I can see how the 6 attachment modality differs from it. And it feels inevitable. Like I can't see around that corner. I just can't. Like I'm not like, oh, my eyes are uniquely defective because they can't see around a corner. Like that's not how corners work. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. And you're saying, but this whole thing is, you're saying that's the primary, because you're a core 6, that's the primary thing, is this awareness of
the map is reality. And I know that, like, the job of moving out of fixation is to not conflate the map with the terrain. And also to use other senses, right? To actually, if I'm traversing the actual terrain, to understand what it feels like under my feet, not to belabor the analogy.
And also maybe not to belabor the analogy, but I like that seeing around corners thing as a visual to grab, because it's kind of like, well, knowing that I can't see around this corner, what am I certain about just with what I can see? And with what is in my view, and that's where maybe that one fix comes in. It's like, all right, well, given what I know, given what I can see, this is what has to be the case.
Right. This is what exactly. This is what I know, and this is what is or is not okay based on what what is in front of me.
Right. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
And we'll close. Okay.
Alrighty.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to my conversation with Celia. If you liked this conversation, then please click the like button or hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Or if you're listening to this as a podcast, then you can leave up to a 5-star review, and you can leave a comment if you're on Apple or Spotify. If you'd like to learn more about the Enneagram, then I would love for you to come check us out at theenneagramschool.com. You can browse interviews just like this, all by type and instinctual stacking. You can also read our free written content on the website about the Enneagram and about all the types in general. And also would love for you to check out our courses, in particular our intro course, where we lay out all the basic concepts that make the Enneagram. If you think you would be a good candidate to be interviewed on the show, then I would love to hear from you. You can reach out to me through the Enneagram School website at the contact form. Just hit the contact form on the top right and let me know what type you are. Preference very strongly goes to people who have been officially typed by the typing team at Enneagrammer.com. In my view, Enneagrammer is the world's most accurate typing service for the Enneagram, and you can check out their typing services at their website, as well as their members area where you can watch them type celebrities in real time and learn their typing methods. Finally, I want to mention that this podcast is part of a kind of larger consortium of Enneagram collaborators, and so I want to plug our sister podcast, Insomnia, where the Dream Girls explore the relationship between the unconscious and dreams in the Enneagram. And also our new podcast called House of Enneagram, where our wider group of collaborators come under one roof to talk about different corners of the Enneagram, as well as using the Enneagram as a lens to look at art, pop culture, current events, and things of that nature. All the links to all the stuff will be in the show notes. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.